What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast, and we got a lot. We got a lot to talk about here as the Mets drop their series to the Oakland Athletics, and they start their homestand 1-2, which is far from ideal considering we were saying we want them to go 7-2 during this homestand. Before we jump into everything, leave a like on your way in. Subscribe if you guys are new, especially if you're a Met fan, and turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live here. I'm going to keep this intro very brief while also giving a bit of a rant here. The Mets are... There was an article that dropped today that the Mets are exploring potentially the option of hiring a GM. One of those guys is pitching coach Jeremy Hefner. The Mets want to promote a guy who, because the Mets pitching staff currently has the second most walks in all of baseball, only ahead of the Chicago White Sox. In terms of the other stats, what was the other one I wanted to have here? It was it home runs? No, it wasn't home runs. I think it was ERA. Yeah, it was ERA. The Mets pitching staff currently is the 11th worst in baseball. And they are in company with teams like the Angels, teams like the White Sox, like I mentioned before. Same with Whip. They're pretty brutal. But this is the guy they want to make GM, the guy that has been the pitching coach for years now and has not made any pitcher good for the long haul for this franchise. Sure, every now and then he's got a couple of relief pitchers to be good, but relievers are such a crapshoot where it's like, does he get the credit? But no, this is the guy they want to make the GM potentially. And the pitching continues to suck, and there's no accountability there. With the amount that they're walking batters, no adjustments made. Hitting-wise, Alvarez has been in a slump for a month now, and it is... like anyone with a pair of eyeballs could see that he's getting absolutely torched on the outside part of the plate. No adjustment there. Brandon Nimmo, no adjustment in his plate approach despite a slump here. Runners in scoring position, the plate approach seems to completely change because I don't know what the hell happens outside of that second game. They were abysmal with runners in scoring position yet again, and that's something that continues to be an issue for this team series after series. So I don't know what the hell there is to say or do anymore other than hit the panic button. And like I said in my post game earlier today, this Marlins series is now their do or die series, because if they get swept by the Marlins, kiss the playoff hopes goodbye, because I'm sorry, if you can't beat the Marlins, I'm not expecting you to beat the Padres and the Diamondbacks on that road trip, nor am I expecting you to beat the Orioles and the rest of that homestand. So they got to get their shit together this Marlins series. Otherwise, they're done here. Like, they're unofficially done here, because I don't know how you reverse that sort of damage.
Well, look, let's be honest. In the last 2 weeks, this Mets team has lost a series to the Angels and the Oakland A's. Two of the worst three teams in the American League. The only team behind them is the Chicago White Sox. And guess who the Mets play in a couple weeks? They got to go out to Chicago and play the White Sox themselves. So that series should be a lot of fun. But no, but just to touch on that point about Hefner potentially being the GM, I don't believe that for 1 second. Like, the guy would be lucky to survive and keep his job as a pitching coach. I think whoever wrote that article was just trying to write an article, and then he got desperate because he didn't have enough names for the list. He's like, oh, let me pull a name out of my ass. Jeremy Hefner. I don't believe that for 1 second. I think if Stern's going to hire somebody, it's going to be a guy who is competent and has an actual track record of being a good GM. So that's my point on that. But look, before we start this off, Jose Quintana, I never want to see you pitch again for my baseball team. You suck. You are terrible. How do you face an Oakland A's lineup, one of the worst teams in baseball? You pitch 4 innings. In three of the 4 innings, you walk the bases loaded. One of them, mind you, you got the bases loaded when you already had 2 outs in the inning. The other one is when you had 2 outs and there was a runner on first. Why are you constantly nibbling around the zone, looking for their batters to chase and to chase at a bad pitch or swing? Bro, go out and attack them. He's terrible.
When it's the Oakland A's of all teams and they don't have their best hitter in the lineup, that's all they did though. That just like you said, outside of what it was like 1 inning, I think only 1 inning Quintana pitched that he didn't load the bases, right?
Yeah, the second inning. But you face a pitcher in Spence who pitches 2 2.3 inning, 2 2/3 inning, and you somehow lose this game. I don't understand. Look, I get it. There's plenty of other blame to go around. You know, Brazaban wasn't great. Reed Garrett wasn't great. The offense missed a lot of opportunities with runners in scoring position. But the reason why they lost the game is because of Jose Quintana. Like, you cannot load the bases 3 times in 4 innings. That is unacceptable. I mean, look at his pitching line. 4 innings, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 4 walks, 1 K, 1 home run. And his ass is lucky that it wasn't 5 earned runs because Shea Langoliers missed home plate. He should have given up 5 runs. It's terrible.
Yeah, and then Paul Blackburn, who got the first start of the series, terrible. There was just nothing. There's really nothing positive, honestly, to take away from the series outside of maybe a few things with the offense. Francisco Lindor continues to be on a tear. If you want a positive there, he's been unbelievable. Mark Vientos, who was in a little bit of a mini slump, he definitely had himself a really great series, and he needs to be hitting in the 2-hole again for the remainder of time until Brandon Nimmo actually gets his shit together, if he ever does. And outside of that, your positives are very, very small. Like Pete Alonso did what he's been doing all season, goes 4 for 4 in the second game with 3 RBIs, follows it up with an 0 for 3 performance. JD Martinez, contributes for a big hit and then really does nothing the next game. It's the repeating patterns that we've seen all season long. And then the only consistency that you've been getting from the bottom of the order is Jeff McNeil. And Carlos Mendoza, I am trying to understand how he came to the decision in today's game, especially when McNeil had that very competitive at-bat. It was like over 10 pitches with that one at-bat. That's the guy that he elects to yank out of the game for Alvarez, who has been in a slump and walked across the plate to get himself out. And it's just a disaster because Alvarez has been, it's getting masked because of how bad Nimmo has been, and Nimmo's at the top of the order, but Alvarez for the past month has been an automatic out. This is it's just terrible the way that he's performing. There's no shortcut around it. And, the last thing that I'll mention again on the pitching, because I don't know why I forgot to mention it before, but every single pitcher today contributed in the walk column today. They had 11 walks, more walks than strikeouts, nearly doubled. And that was from every single pitcher. Every pitcher contributed a walk today.
Well, look, yes. First of all, shout out to Mark Vientos because he was on a tear today. And look, last podcast, I did mention that if Nimmo wasn't going to be in the lineup, I said move him to the 2-hole. It worked today. So hopefully they stick with it. And look, with Nimmo, I don't care if it was a stomach bug, whatever he had. He had to sit anyway, and Vientos just showed him up today, and he basically said, I should be hitting the 2-hole. So Mendy better keep him in the 2-hole. With the Alvarez thing, right? Here's my thing. I'm not going to make any excuses for him because you are right. He's been terrible, and the numbers back it up. He's basically been an automatic out for the last month. But here's my thing. I don't get the people that say, oh, you got to send them down to AAA. Send them down to AAA. I'm sorry, but that's not going to do anything. They did that with Brett Beatty. Like, you send him down to AAA, he rakes, he comes back up, and he still can't hit. Sending Alvarez down to AAA is not going to fix anything. You know why? Because if he's going to go down to AAA and he's going to get pitches that he can hit and destroy, which is what happened when he first came up. He got pitches that he could hit and hit them far for home runs. But what happened is what typically major league pitching staffs do is after a certain guy comes up and he rakes, they adjust. They scout, they watch video, and they adjust to see where your weaknesses are. And that's what opposing pitching staffs have done to Alvarez, because we've seen it now for the last month. What's his weakness? breaking balls low and outside. He cannot hit those pitches to save his life. But this is my thing, right? I'm not gonna get on the bandwagon and call Francisco Alvarez a bust, right? Because look, he's not a bust. This is gonna be his second full year, and he had a good first year last year. He played really well in the first half of this year. Second half, he's been horrible, like you mentioned. But this is part of developing and the developmental period. He now has to learn to adjust to the pitchers. Now, look, if we're still here next year and the beginning of the fourth year, then sure, and he's still doing this, then sure, you can call him a bust. Because at that point, third year, fourth year, if you don't figure things out, then yeah, you could be labeled that. But I'm not gonna go out of my way and say for a guy that has not even played 2 full years, I'm not gonna call him a bust. Like I said, he has to now adjust. If he doesn't, cool, we'll have the discussion eventually. But I'm not ready to just throw him under the bus like that.
I disagree with part of that. Like, I'm not gonna call him a bust yet, but my only counter argument with what you mentioned with AAA is that there's scenarios where it's worked, where guys have went down. Like, look at Mark Vientos. He started the year in AAA, and has fluctuated between the minor leagues and the major leagues, and he's been killing it ever since. Like, there are plenty of examples you could look at the other way. It's just a matter of what you want to look at. Even David Peterson, who I do think is kind of fake good this year, his numbers have been better than they were last year. And he's another guy that, has been fluctuating between AAA and the major leagues. Like, there are certain scenarios where it does build confidence, and I do think it could help him, but then again, it's also hard to argue to send him down to AAA because who is your third catcher? Like, we literally had the discussion the last episode of we don't know who the third catcher on the roster is currently, and we don't want to find out. But, I mean, with the way Luis Torrens is swinging the bat, it's hard to argue to play Alvarez every day over Torrens. Like, Luis Torrens, yet again, comes up with a big RBI today, and, he's been 2 RBIs, I should say, on that hit. And he just continues to rake and continues to come up when it matters. Like, it's really hard to justify not playing him over Alvarez. The only way you could justify it is that guys are pitching better with Alvarez behind the plate, which is another thing that just crossed my mind that I'm not understanding. So how come when Christian Scott was healthy, they were so allergic to letting Alvarez catch him, but because we had to rest Alvarez in time for him to catch Jose Quintana and Sean Manaea, they had to roll out the red carpet, feed grapes for those two. And now Christian Scott gets hurt, and now all of a sudden, it doesn't matter. Luis Torrens could be back there to catch Jose Quintana, and all of a sudden, it's completely fine. Throw whoever out there. But again, Scott was here and we were rolling out the red carpet and feeding grapes to the veterans instead of accommodating a guy who's actually going to mean something for the now and the long haul. It just makes no sense, the philosophy with a lot of things they've done this season, to be completely honest with you. Like, you look at Scott's load management, even, which we talked at length about. That was another thing that made no sense. The way they've handled Jesse Winker thus far has made little to no sense to me so far. Like, there are certain things that just, again, I'm not understanding, because it was the second game. That was right. It was the second game where Jesse Winker, it was a 3-0 game still, and they pull him out of the game. Like, and it's not like they're pitch hitting him because it was a lefty righty matchup thing. They just took him out of the game. It's like, I don't understand what they're doing with him. Like, why are we load managing a 30-year-old outfielder? Why are we not load managing our young pitchers? Why are we not accommodating our young pitchers? It's just some of the philosophical standpoints, I should say, have just been head scratching to me at times this year.
Well, here's the thing with the Torrens thing. Like, I get it. Like, Torrens has been really good, and I've been loving me some Luis Torrens. Every time he comes up to the plate, he needs a big hit. Most of the time, he comes through. But the thing is, like, right, you send Alvarez down, and you send whoever the fuck they have up from AAA. Like, I still don't know who the AAA catcher is, so he's probably going to be an automatic out here at the major league level too. But if you give Luis Torrens the starting catcher role and Alvarez goes down, if you keep feeding Torrens at bats, like, eventually you will start to see the cracks over there. And it's similar to what we've seen with Jose Iglesias this year. Like and since he came up, and then recently when he's had limited time playing, you've seen him come up with big hits. But when it was that time period where McNeil was really struggling and Marte went down and Iglesias was getting a large amount of playing time, you start to see the cracks in Iglesias' games. Now, but these are what Iglesias and Torrens are. They're bench guys who every now and then can come through with a big hit when needed. But if you have to rely on them for a long period of time, you're going to start to see the cracks and why they haven't nailed down starting spots in other teams. And then, but look, I wouldn't be opposed to sitting Alvarez right now, especially since we heard the news before that he had the shoulder injury. Now, look, if he's hurt, then he shouldn't be playing. Like that's fairly simple, and we've seen it before with like Jacob Trouba on the Rangers. Like if you're hurt, like I get it, you want to play, and I appreciate the fact that you want to play. But if you're not playing at 100% and you can't bat up to what you're supposed to, then you're just being a detriment at that point. Sit down and don't play. I'm not gonna go at you because you're injured and you can't play. Like that's just how it is. But look, if you want to start splitting time between them and you want to sit Alvey a bit more and let Torrens have more at bats, I'm not opposed to that because something's got to give, and it's either he's gonna figure it out, Alvey, in terms of figuring out how to start hitting the breaking ball low and outside, or you're just gonna sit him, let him rest up, let him maybe recover from an injury, and just let Torrens have some more time.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's making it hard for me at least to say it's the injury, it's the injury. It's like we just talked about what the issue is. Like we're clearly seeing a hole in his swing when it's the outside part of the plate, and maybe the injury caused him to be scared and back off the plate because clearly he's backed off the plate. Like I don't think it's a pitcher adjustment thing. I truly think it's an Alvarez adjustment thing because I'm pretty sure they broke it down during one of the games that he like moved back in the batter's box for some reason, and he gets exposed on that part of the plate. So I'm sure, I guess it goes hand in hand a bit, but a lot of it is on him, and he can't be afraid. He needs to get there because he's still making contact at certain points. It's just, again, when it's outside, he's missing every single time. And my problem with this argument is that they're not winning games anyway right now. So does it matter? Because I would agree if, they were on a heater right now, and even if Alvarez was struggling, I'd say, yeah, all right, well, clearly his defense is making an impact and you got to keep him around. But I don't know. Like, I would be on board with either setting him down, benching him, Phantom IL stint, whatever it may be. Because right now I'm looking at the catcher options. I mean, Austin Allen is performing pretty well in Syracuse right now. Joe Hudson's performing well. Logan Porter, the guy who they claimed, has been horrendous for them. But, you have some options there. And I don't think it's the worst thing to do. But at the same time, you're also running the risk, I guess, of hurting his confidence. And then you're also running the risk of hurting, the pitching staff because they seem to like him and they perform better with him. But I don't know. It's really hard to find that fine line right now with Alvarez because there is that side where his defense still is making the impact it is, but there's also that side where it's like what he's doing right now at the plate is just, it's unplayable. Like it's an automatic out. He has a 30 WRC plus in the second half. That is so horrendous and unplay, like it's worse than Nemo's right now. And we talked about Nemo being unplayable the other day. How are we supposed to argue that Alvarez should be playing right now outside of his defense? And it's just like, I don't know. It's a tough decision. I'm glad it's not my decision, but for me, I'm open to whatever avenue the Mets want to explore because there's got to be something, like you said, that gives here because this is just, it's just not good enough. It just isn't at all.
Well, the biggest thing you see with Alvarez is like when he was on earlier in the year and now to the start where he's been an automatic out is when Francisco Alvarez is on his game, you see him drive the ball the other way. And you haven't seen that at all. The only other time we've seen it was in the second game of the Rocky series where he started off that inning with a triple and he took that ball to opposite field. So when he's on his game, he's able to, spread the ball out, all sides of the field. But through this bad slump that he's in, he's just not been able to do that. And yeah, I don't know. Look, for me, I wouldn't send him down personally. I would bench him, but that's just me. I don't make the decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, and speaking of benchings, like we talked about with Brandon Nimmo, didn't play today. Looks like there's a chance that he's not going to play tomorrow. Mendy didn't make it sound like it was a lock for him to play, so we're probably looking at either Tyrone Taylor, who reached base one less time than Nimmo and only got one at bat in this series. You're probably looking at him playing maybe Ben Gamble, depending on the matchup at that point. Outside of that, because I don't know if Marte is going to be back for this series. Maybe he is, which honestly right now would probably be the best time to bring him back because you're kind of desperate. Like you really are. And if it's not Vientos, I'm willing to give Marte a chance in the 2 hole right now because you got to get something going here at this point. But I quite frankly don't know if it's going to be this series. I think he's still one more away. It just sucks though because with the way things are with Nimmo right now, this would be the perfect time to get him some playing time. But I don't know how you handle some of these things because even if you do drop Nimmo in the lineup and bench him, you got so many guys that are just not performing well. And this is where it's just infuriating. And we knew that it was going to be this way going into the year, but it's just infuriating when we're watching it. Although this is more wild than I thought with the inconsistency because the team in July was just firing on all cylinders offensively. And then when it's bad, I mean, this is just like infuriating to watch. And then I don't know because I really don't know if there's anything you could do differently with the lineup other than put Vientos in the 2 hole for now. And yeah, move Nimmo down when he does play because you got to take pressure off him. He needs to be hitting like 7th or 8th at this point right now.
No, yeah, Nimmo's got to go down. Like, I don't care what he says. I don't care if he's considered one of the co-captains. Like, you have to do what's best for the lineup. Nimmo's not hitting. Fine, you got to go down. You gotta face your consequences. But look, I think like if we take this back to the start of the season and before the season started, we said that the offense is going to have to carry this team and that the pitching staff, which we didn't know at the time because I'll give them credit for the start of the season and pretty much for the first half of the year, the pitching staff was pretty good. But we said, how much can this hold up? Because Sevy has not looked the same. Quintana is just terrible. Like, sure, he'll give you the odds, good start here and there, but he's done here. I don't want to see him ever again. Manaea, cool. He's probably been the most consistent since the All-Star break, but even then, like we saw last time out, he could be got at. Hauser's gone. Scott's hurt. Sanga's hurt. And listen, we said on the podcast after Sanga got hurt that this pitching staff, like they were able to get through the first half without Sanga, but were they going to be able to get through the second half of the year with Sanga out? And it's showing, and the cracks are showing because without a recognized ace and a bunch of guys that are pretty much 3-4 starters, it's not looking good. And then especially with Scott out, because like even though Scott wasn't exactly lighting up the world, he certainly did have his home run problems where I think in every game except for one he did let up a home run. So he did have his problems, but for most of the time, whenever Scott was out there, he was striking guys out a lot. He was going long. Most of his starts were at least like 6 innings at most. So yeah, I understand that he wasn't perfect, but he was giving you length. And now like a bunch of these guys like Sevy most recently and Quintana most recently where they're giving you 4 or 5 innings. So the cracks are starting to show. And look, next year, Stearns is going to have some work to do in terms of, rebuilding the rotation because a lot of guys not going to be here. I don't see Sevy coming back. I just think there's too much risk involved, and I think some other team will probably end up overpaying him. Manaea has a team option, he has a player option, sorry. So, and considering how he's had a pretty good year, so I'm pretty sure he'll opt out of that deal. He'll probably get overpaid. Yeah, Hauser's gone. Blackburn still has a team option, so the Mets will probably keep him around. He'll probably be the fifth starter. So you're really looking at next year Senga coming back, which hopefully next year he is healthy and stays the whole year healthy. You have Scott and Sproat there now. Hopefully Scott, his UCL will be fine, so he doesn't have to have Tommy John surgery. Because if he's gone next year, then that's another big blow. And look, they're going to have to go out there, whether that's on the free agent market and sign a guy like either Sasaki or Corbin Burns, or they go through the trade market and trade for a guy like Tariq Skubal. Either way, though, they need an ace. And they better go get an ace considering all that money for Verlander and Scherzer is coming off the books.
And on top of that, I'm really hoping, because we had this discussion earlier, like a very similar discussion that kind of goes in hand with the Rangers on a Twitter Spaces earlier. And that discussion was the Rangers at their trade deadline did not want to move their prospect in Brennan Othman. And then this offseason, they end up creating holes or, filling holes on the roster and leaving no room for him to make the team. I am hoping that the Mets don't do a similar thing where they decided to be passive at this deadline, conservative buyers, and then all of a sudden, I feel both ways though, because there's this part of me that wants to see them go out and sign guys, but that's also like, why didn't you go more in at the deadline if you're not going to give, a full rotation spot to Jose Budo next season, if you're not going to give Brandon Sproat the reins, if you're not going to give Christian Scott a rotation spot, and then you still have Peterson who has control, you still have Blackburn, you still have Senga under contract, like you have so many guys, but that's what worries me. And I'm just hoping that there is some way, because I don't want to talk about the offseason too much. There's really no point in getting into that stuff now, and there's no point talking about the deadline because what's done is done. But I am hoping the Texas Rangers, there's been rumors that they will potentially put guys on waivers. If Nathan Eovaldi is one of those guys and the Mets have a chance to claim him, they would be out of their mind to not grab him. Like, you have the financial flexibility. He would automatically be the ace of your rotation. And I know he's a little banged up right now, but when he's healthy, he's going to give you volume, and he's going to be, he's a guy you could actually rely on every fifth day to go out there and throw the ball, has postseason experience. Like, that's the type of guy they need to easily grab. And then, you go to the bullpen, and this goes hand in hand too, because you're not getting length from your pitchers. Brazoban has looked terrible lately. Why? Because he's virtually in every single game, because right now the starters aren't giving, you're not getting more than 5 innings outside of that Peterson start. It's been a while outside of that. And then on top of that, he's been getting used a lot. Maton is starting to get used a lot. Ottavino's unusable, so you're not going to rely on him unless it's a blowout game. Stanek is shaky. Danny Young is shaky, and his arm is getting run into the ground even. And then Diaz, they are very conservative with and never really use him at all unless it's the right opportunity. And then Reed Garrett, I'm sorry, but the fun is over with Reed Garrett. You gotta. I'm tired of it at this point. I'm glad he had his 2 months. That's great. He contributed, but where is David Stern's word of, relievers are a crapshoot, your bullpen's not going to be the same from the beginning of the year to the end? Where is that? Why is that only an exception for certain relievers? Why is Reed Garrett still getting trotted out there? Why is Adam Ottavino getting trotted out there? It just makes no sense, especially when you have Alex Young, you have Matt Gage, you have all these options in the minor league. Sean Reed Foley's close to coming back. It just makes, again, another thing philosophy-wise that just hasn't been consistent.
Here's another thing, and this literally just popped into my head as you were talking, because it's a guy that the Mets have misused, and they misused him in this series. Jose Budo could have came in today. Especially Quintana only give you 4 innings. He could have gave you at least 3 innings today, probably, and he wouldn't have.
Think of that.
I mean, look, you probably don't know, but most likely he wouldn't have walked guys. He just would have had 3 probably nice innings and would have gave you some much needed length. Why did he come into that first game? There wasn't they were already down. What was it when he came in? I forgot the score, but they're already losing. Like the time they're bringing Jose Budo is not when they're losing to use him as mop up duty. No, you bring him in when you got a 5-run lead. Quintana gives up, makes a 1-run lead, and then you give him a lead to work with for 3 innings to try and get you through the game. That's when you use Jose Budo because you're basically disrespecting him by using him in a mop up role. Like no offense, but fucking Tyler McGill, who's a scrub, should be using a mop up role. Not Jose Budo, who's a valuable reliever and has shown multiple times throughout this year that he could get big outs coming out of the bullpen.
Or Ottavino in a mop-up role who can't get through innings anyway. Who the hell cares if you cook his arm at this point? Or clearly you like using Brazovan in a mop-up role. Why was he the guy used today? And like you said, I didn't even think of that because if Budo's in this game, Brazovan's not touched, Garrett's not touched, and who's to say if he does or doesn't allow those runs that they allow? But, I would be more inclined to think that he allows maybe at most like 2 runs, and who knows what happens in extra innings. Anything could happen at that point with the ghost runner on. So, yeah, like, I don't know. There was just multiple different avenues they could have handled it. And again, another philosophy thing that makes no sense. And it just doesn't make sense where you use the Budo usage is just bothering me so much because it's like he gives 2 innings and then he's out of commission for the rest of the series. Like, if he's going to be in the pen, why could Brazovan give 2 innings in a series, in the first game of a series, and then still be available at the end of a series for an inning? Like, that doesn't make sense to me either. Like, I don't know. I just don't get the usage of these guys at all. And like you said, someone said in the chat, they will look at the waiver wire for help because, to go back to my point with the Texas Rangers, if David Robertson and Kirby Yates are available off waivers, and those guys could be had by the time it's the Mets' turn to pick guys up, or even Jose Leclerc, I'm easily grabbing any of those guys because they automatically become the second, third best reliever outside of Edwin Diaz and, Denel Nunez for when he's healthy, but obviously he's not, and they are desperately missing him because would it have been nice to have had Denel Nunez pitch in this game too? But, this is my point. It's like this is the problem that the Mets have right now that we're not discussing enough, in my opinion. They have their high leverage guy in Diaz, and then they don't have, it's not, I would say you have your high leverage guys, you have your guys that could pitch in high leverage spots, and then there's that tier where the Mets just have a crowd of pitchers, but it's just not good enough. Like, outside of Budo too, but you have that tier where that's just what everyone is. Like, Maton is in that tier. I would put Stanek in that tier because I think he's a little bit better than what he's shown. I would put Garrett in that tier, Brazovan, all these guys where it's like they're not particularly elite. They can't get the high leverage outs, most times, maybe every now and then, but they're all in the same grouping where they're good but not good enough. Like, I hate to sound old school in all this, but they need that traditional 8th inning guy to get to Diaz.
Which is what David Robertson was supposed to be last year until Diaz got hurt, and then he had to take over the closer role, and they cooked his arm for the first half of the series because once he got traded to the Marlins, David Robertson was not the same guy at all. He was unpitchable. Like, you couldn't pitch him. I'm pretty sure he had like a 5.84 ERA when he got traded to the Marlins. Like, it was bad. But then going back to the Budo point, like, the only time you should be bringing in Jose Budo when the Mets are losing is if it's a 1-run or a 2-run game. The game's close, and you just need him to give you some length. That's the only time. But if you're bringing him down by 5 or 6 runs, or even like weeks before, like I remember in the first game of the Twin Series when the Mets beat 15-1, Quintana pitched 6 innings, and the Mets are already up big at that point. I think they were already up like 12-0 at that point, and they brought him in to pitch the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. Like, why? Why are you wasting him to just finish a game? Like, save him for the high leverage spots because he is capable of getting through those high leverage spots. Unlike, having to use a guy like Adam Ottavino, Stanek, Brazovan, the guys so far that have shown that they are not able to get through those high leverage situations. But then, yeah, like you mentioned, if the Rangers just decide to go full Angels mode like last year and just decide to dump guys on the waivers, then yeah, they got to be all over that because Nathan Eovaldi is 50 times better than Jose Quintana and Kirby Yates and David Robinson. If you bring him back into this bullpen, this bullpen instantly becomes a lot better.
I mean, this bullpen becomes one of the best in baseball all of a sudden. Like, you're talking that you pretty much have everything you need then at that point. You have Edwin Diaz, you have your guys, because once Nunez comes back too, you have 3 different guys you could fluctuate between to give you high leverage outs. David Robertson, which, by the way, then you don't need to employ a lefty in your bullpen because David Robertson is good at getting lefties out. So you have a guy that could be a lefty specialist and get those high leverage outs there. You have Nunez, you have Yates, and then you have that tier. You could live with the tier of guys of Maton, Stanek, either of the Young brothers. Like, you have, like, that tier is fine when they're not your second best relievers. But the problem is, they're your second, third best guys. And the reason I say second is because Budo more times than not is not available enough, and that's the problem here. And yeah, they need a true setup reliever as a bridge to Diaz, and it's just the truth because if Budo's not going to be available on a nightly basis for you to be that, then you have to find something from the outside, and that's why it still boggled my mind that they never, explored that enough at the deadline. And I get that the reliever market was very expensive to pay for, but it was a very big hole. But this is also where it goes back to the offseason, where I just wonder time and time again, if they weren't paying money for Scherzer and Verlander this year, I'm not even wondering. I would go as far as say I would bet my last dollar that they would have brought back David Robertson at that point. Because at that point, it's like, why not? Money, we have the money. Let's just get him, and we're not going to, hit that luxury tax penalty. But the problem is they couldn't do that.
And Stearns knows that he has to get a setup guy because he had it in Milwaukee. Josh Hader was the big-time closer, but who was the bridge guy to get to Josh Hader? Devin Williams, a guy, again, who was dominant as well. I mean, Hader gets the most love, but Devin Williams was a very important piece of that Milwaukee Brewers bullpen when, for those multiple years where they made the playoffs, and including that 2018 NLCS run, which they almost beat the Dodgers to get to the World Series. So it's going to be important. I don't exactly know who the free agent guys are going to be in for relievers, but even though like you shouldn't overpay for relievers because we know how it works with relievers in the MLB, like it fluctuates. 1 year you could look dominant, and then the next year you don't look the same. So it's going to be interesting to see who Stearns targets next offseason, but let's see what he does.
Yeah, because for right now, you really don't have anyone that's on the horizon to really be that, unless, like I said, unless they continue to go internal with Nunez. Maybe they do change things with Budo, but all I know is that for right now, it's a problem. It's a very big problem, and we mention him every episode, but we got to give the shout out to Brooks Raley because, man, do we miss that man. Couldn't miss that man anymore if we tried. But, I don't really know if I have much more to add in terms of this series and all that other stuff. We'll get into, obviously, like, prospect stuff and all that other, a bunch of other things that there is to talk about. But is there anything you want to add related to the series before we shift gears?
There is one thing we missed because this guy needs to get cooked because of the BS that this guy was spewing after the game in interviews. JD Martinez.
Oh, I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me.
What are you doing? I don't want to hear these bullshit excuses of you saying, oh, it's August. It's humid. It's after the All-Star break, Guys are tired. Oh, you're tired. Shut up. Every single team is in the same position as you. All you guys are playing under the same circumstances. Yeah, it's humid. Guess what? It's humid for both teams. It's hot for both teams. I don't want to hear it. you are a major league veteran. You have been a great hitter throughout the last couple years of your career. Don't come over here trying to insult our intelligence by saying, "Oh," and making all these excuses. You know what? Because I don't see the Dodgers. I don't see Mookie Betts out there complaining, "Oh, it's humid, it's hot." I don't see Adley Rushman for the Baltimore Orioles going out and say, "Oh, we're tired. It's hot. It's humid." No, guess what? The good teams, they're able to get through these circumstances and they don't make excuses. Poor teams who are going through rough stretches, they make these excuses. I don't want to hear it. Figure it out.
And if August is so tough, then what's the excuse for what happened in May? Like, why are we not talking about what happened in May? And I know he wasn't here in April, but oh, it's too cold, but now it's too hot. Like, what the fuck do you need? Like a perfect 65, 70 degree weather day? Like, no. And if anything, you should have the advantage with the humidity and stuff, because typically New York gets more humid than Oakland. So you should be having the advantage, if anything, over teams that are like that. And you just played in Anaheim. Anaheim's not a place that gets that humid. Like, so what's the excuse there? I don't get it, but it's such a lame excuse. And then in terms of another shout out we got to give in terms of stupidity, shout out again to Sal Licata. Just, instead of focusing time on, and acknowledging the fact that he was stupid for saying the wild card race is over, he's going on WFAN ranting about the Hawk Tua girl throwing out the first pitch in today's game, because, why rant about other things, and why go on the air and admit that you were wrong to say the wild card race was over in July, when you could just instead talk about that. But whatever, I'm not gonna waste my breath. He blocked me on Twitter. He can't handle it. He can't handle the heat, so he needs to get out of the kitchen.
Bro, it's so dumb. People make such a big deal out of like things that don't matter. Like, yeah, sure, I get it. It's dumb. Like, why should throw out the first pitch? I don't know. But at the same time, the Mets let Grimace throw out the first pitch, and Grimace is not a real thing. So what are we doing? Listen, good for her. She got her 15 minutes of fame. I think people are just mad because it's not them that got a little internet famous off of that, and it was her. But stop making big deals out of things that don't need to be big deals. Like I said, sure, it was dumb, but you don't have to go out and say like it's embarrassing and stuff, because at the end of the day, who cares? It's the first pitch. Like, seriously, guys, get over it.
No, yeah, that's what I said on Twitter. It's like, both things could be true. It is pretty stupid, and embarrassing. It is a little embarrassing. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna sit here and talk for 20 minutes and rant about that, when at the end of the day, that's like, I know we made jokes about Grimace, being the savior of this team and everything, but deep down, the players at the end of the day are responsible for the actions on the field. Like, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. And for right now, it's, a coincidence that they performed when Grimace threw out the first pitch. And for right now, it's a coincidence that they're underperforming. Like, it is what it is. The players have to play the games at the end of the day. I'd rather waste my breath and energy on them, who, mentally make me go insane, especially when I had to endure 4 hours of that game today, which we didn't even talk about that, which is probably the most important thing, is that we had to nearly watch this game for 4 hours today, which was probably the worst part of it all, because Katana pitching is like worse than watching paint dry. And then on top of that, longest game since they implemented the pitch clock, or a 9-inning game, I should say. And I said in my post game, from New York to San Francisco, you could have took a flight there and already been halfway there for the amount of time that game took. It was just absolutely ridiculous. But
it was crazy. It took them 2 hours and 17 minutes to get through 5 innings of that game.
So stupid. I genuinely thought when they were at the 5th inning, I'm like, this is actually going to be a 5-hour game.
Like on July 1st, when the Mets played the Nationals in DC. Oh, sorry, on July 4th, on New Year's Day, on 4th of July, that game was an hour and 59 minutes. They played that whole game. It was 2 hours and 17 minutes just to get through the first 5 innings. Gee, just another reason to get the catapult ready off the Whitestone Bridge.
Yeah, and I'd rather be more mad at that and be more mad at Jose Katana quite literally making my literally taking away my entire afternoon. Like that's I'd rather be more mad about that. I could have done way better things, but it's fine. I still got my workout in. I still got things done today. So it is what it is, but it sucks that's the problem with, Katana days. It's a commitment. It's not just you sit down at 7 o'clock, 1 o'clock to watch a baseball game. It's a commitment that I'm going to sit in front of the TV for a minimum 2.5 to 3 hours because Jose Katana's on the mound today and he's going to issue at least 5 walks and he's going to make you want to pull your hair out. So that's the only thing that sucks. So, I already complained about weekday afternoon games to begin with, but when Katana pitches, it's even worse because it's like, I know I'm not going to get to enjoy my day. Like there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. If only there was a flight of stairs.
Yeah. I mean, that's for the positive Peters, but we'll move on. Which prospects do you want to trade in the offseason? I have no clue because I have no idea how the offseason's going to shape up, but if you're asking me who I'd be willing to move, probably the same guys as I was at the deadline, like, Brett Beatty. I really don't mind moving. Like the only untouchables to me were really Ryan Clifford and Brandon Sproat. And if you want to include Christian Scott, him, those are my really only, untouchables at the deadline. I like Jet Williams, but if you could find a proven young star, I'm moving him. Same kind of went for Drew Gilbert, where I'd prefer not to move him. But if the right guy is available, like if they could have moved Drew Gilbert for, at the time I didn't want Jazz, but seeing the impact he's made, if that type of deal was available, Drew Gilbert and maybe like lower level prospects for Jazz, I would have done that. Just like deals along those lines. Otherwise, I'm not looking to throw prospects out the door. Like I'm not trying to do that, but I also wouldn't mind them using their resources to improve the team for next season. But that's kind of more off-season stuff. But speaking of prospects, we'll shift gears there in terms of some of the prospect stuff because not great, to be honest with you. Drew Gilbert hurt again, got hit in the nuts by a pitch. And I'm not sure the injury status.
I think he's playing. I think he just came out of the game, but he's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine. Just maybe a day or two off.
I think he's already playing. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Well, I'm pretty sure he's playing again.
That works, but still not fun stuff. I'm not sure if Jet Williams has started playing. I don't think so. In terms of Brandon Sproat, which I'm sure everyone wants to hear about because he's probably the closest to being in the major leagues. Currently in AAA, his first start, not the greatest, but his second start, didn't get to see what happened because he got ejected in the game. So we'll have to wait and see what else there is from Brandon Sproat. Ryan Clifford continues to do Ryan Clifford things. His numbers are dipping a bit, but still not bad. Carson Bench in single A right now, 1 game. Pretty good stuff. Went 1 for 2, so good stuff there at least. And outside of that, I mean, there's really nothing to highlight on the prospect front. But yeah, because Acuna kind of been underwhelming still. Baez got sidelined for the year, which sucked. The only other thing prospect-wise maybe I could highlight is Mike Vasil actually had a decent start recently, which is a nice surprise because he has been very underwhelming and he's kind of been falling by the wayside a bit. And the last thing I actually will mention prospect-wise, it was very nice to see Matt Allen throwing. I'm not sure what to expect from him at this point because the writing's kind of on the wall for his career to not be anything great, unfortunately. But, it's good for, like, I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he's, at least being able to throw right now. And hopefully there's still a way that he could make the big leagues at some point. After all that he's been through, which would be a very cool story. But yeah, just happy for the guy. So that's your brief little prospect update. And yeah, Beatty's playing second currently down there in Syracuse. So maybe a September call up there. Who knows? But That's just the deal with him.
But
And then, sorry, what were you saying?
I was gonna say, yeah, just going back to that question of which prospects would I trade in the offseason. The only there's pretty much three guys I think they will get traded in the offseason. One, Beatty, because I just don't think he has a spot on this team, and I don't think he's good enough. I think he's shown it because I even think his numbers in AAA dipped a little bit. I think he's been struggling down there as well. I think Acuna gets traded as well because Stearns didn't trade for him, so he really has no attachment to that guy to him. And I also think that I'm pretty sure, but he dropped out of the top 100 in pipeline rankings for prospects. And I pretty much I think the fact that Mauricio is going to get that second base spot because at least he's in the small time that he had last year, he showed that he can come up and hit here. So I think he's going to be given another chance next year at the second base role. So that really doesn't leave a spot for Acuna. So I think he gets moved on. And Parada for me gets moved on just because I don't think he has a spot in this organization at catcher. So it's pretty much a matter of time before Parada gets dealt.
That's the problem too. Like Parada and Acuna and all these guys. This is why I was saying like I really wouldn't have cared if they moved these guys at the deadline to get better. Like mostly guys with control I wanted if they moved their prospects, but I really wouldn't have minded it because it's like they were 7 above 500 at the time and why not try to get better? And if there's no room for some of these prospects, I don't know. I wouldn't have minded moving them, but that's all we'll discuss on the prospect front unless there's anything you wanted to add before I segue into the final discussion here.
No, I got nothing on the prospects.
All right, so we'll segue into injury stuff. Your typical injury updates. Christian Scott, good news there. No damage on the UCL. Could that linger potentially at some point? Sure, unfortunately. But so far, he's on the right track to potentially make a comeback. And the fact that they did everything to avoid Tommy John makes me feel like they want him to be in the plans and they want him on the Major League roster. So I'm sure at some point he's going to return. He's going to start throwing from the mound soon. Starry Marte, who I briefly mentioned before, he's on his way back, probably just one series away. If not, he'll return in the middle of this Miami series potentially. So we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, so that's a good sign right there that he could potentially be returning. And then you look at some of the other injury stuff. Sean Reed Foley had a little bit of a setback or phantom setback. I don't know what the deal is there because he just kind of stopped throwing. So I don't know what the deal is there. Nunez, not sure if we've heard anything about him at this rate. And it's kind of bothering me that we haven't heard anything about Nunez. And then kind of a forgotten piece for a guy that is making his way back, which could be a potential, reliever option, which not that I'm in favor of it. It could be somebody if he is better coming back from the injury. Grant Hartwig, he's starting to make his way up the rankings. He currently is with the Rumble Ponies right now. Was actually having a decent year in Syracuse, so he potentially could make his way back up there in a short amount of time and maybe again become an option for the Mets if they get desperate for a reliever. So that's really all there is to that with the injury update because unfortunately nothing really else on the Nunez front, which is really the guy. It sucks. The guy that I want back the most. We really have no news on him, but outside of that, yeah, Marte coming back. Looking forward to that. I am and I'm not. I'm definitely worried about his defense still, and I thought for sure JD Martinez was about to get an IL stint when he got hit. So I was like, oh, there you go. There's the opening for Marte, and he doesn't have to play the field. But that ended up not being the case, which is also good that Martinez avoided that. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all there is, unless anyone in the chat has anything to mention, unless you also have anything to mention. But other than that, I mean, I don't really think there's anything else to discuss. We got our anger out, gave updates and all that stuff. But yeah, unless you have anything else you want to bring up.
Please don't lose to the Marlins. Please. I know that's a huge y'all know, but please, I'm begging you, if you want any hope of making a playoffs, which really, to be honest, because you don't deserve to make the playoffs at this point, you don't. But hey, listen, the Braves keep on losing, so you keep on getting fed opportunities to take advantage. Please finally do it in this series, especially before you gotta go take on a good Baltimore Orioles team.
Yeah, I would. I'd love that, and a lot of that would help if guys started to get back on track instead of currently envisioning themselves fighting over the life rafts in Cancun. But unfortunately, that's not the case right now. Guys just will continue to slump. I guess we could briefly mention the Marlins series since you kind of did. Manaea versus Munoz tomorrow in that matchup. So hopefully Manaea could have a big bounce back start and get back on track there. Mayer versus Severino in a 4 o'clock game on Saturday. Severino as well. Hopefully could get back on track. And then you have Blackburn, who needs to get back on track himself too. So all the stars need to get back on track versus Belzo. So I don't really know any of these Marlins pitchers. I'll be completely frank with you. So that means they're due to
Perfect game, no hitter,
annihilate the Mets. Yeah. But that's the last thing that I will touch up on as well, because it just came to my head. I will be covering tomorrow's game, but then for the next week or so, Matt will be taking the coverage there because I will be out of town again. So for the Marlins series, which it sucks that this is potentially the do or die series and I will not be able to cover, but I also can't complain because I will not be I'll be on vacation, so it's hard to complain there. But he will be covering that, the Orioles series, and then the first 2-3 games of the Padres series that will be left up to him. So I don't know if are you going to do any of the podcast episodes after the series, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they'll be pre-recorded or go live, but I'll see. I'll most likely do some podcasts.
So there you go. So you'll still get your content, just not from me, which is probably a better thing because you'll get more irrational takes from me. You'll get more anger from me, where Matt's more composed, more calm, cool, collected. So you'll get more rational takes there if that's something you're more interested in. But if you live for the angry takes and all that stuff, then I'm sorry to disappoint you.
No, I could be angry and irrational, but that's not my style. But if I have to go to that point, I'll believe me, like I can find another level. But that's just not my.
If the Mets drop some games, then I think that will change all of that.
But usually my game style, my approach to the plate, because Mets don't have a plate approach. But my approach is just nice, calm, think rationally, look at the outside context, and go from there.
Last thing I will touch on, just because there's a comment here, unless anyone else has more comments, feel free, because I really don't have anything better to do right now anyway, so I'm completely fine with this continuing on for any longer. But Winker's been underwhelming in Stanley's eyes, and Stanley, I completely agree. I 1,000% agree. I really don't give a rat's ass that he's hitting 300, because that's all every Met fan is mentioning right now, is that he has a 300 average. To pair that with a sub 700 OPS, which I was told the guy was here because he, draws a lot of walks and is constantly getting on base, but that's not really happening, and he's kind of been a singles merchant here. So I agree. I'm very underwhelmed still with Jesse Winker. I don't know. He's been here for weeks. Still no power from the guy either. And that's still why I'm shocked that they even got him over Brandon Lau, who probably would have 5 to 6 home runs by now if he was here. And he's probably still tearing it up as of lately with Tampa, which I'll look right now to really, just hurt myself even more. Just give myself a little, twist the knife even further, if you will, because I like to do that to myself. I like to, sometimes it's therapeutic to give myself pain. That's why I'm into getting, it's why I like getting tattoos too. Like, it's therapeutic to, live through some of the pain every now and then. But in terms of Brandon Lau, his numbers in the, I want to find his second half numbers if I can. Yeah, still 137 WRC plus. I think that's good. That's like, it's really up there with pretty good players right there, as well as a 839 OPS, which I also think is good. Hitting 250 for my batting average people out there. I think all that stuff is pretty good. So, why not just hurt myself more? And just to hurt myself even further, I'm going to look at where he ranks in WRC plus since the second half has started, because why not? So, let's see. So, since July 15th, that's when the second half has started. Oh, look at that. You got Randy Arozarena 14th, who the Mets could have had for, not an expensive price. Oh, hey, Jazz Chisholm there too, which also could have been had as well. But he's 58th in all baseball, around guys like, Willie Adames, who's a solid hitter, above a guy like Ellie De La Cruz, who's regarded as an elite shortstop, above Gunnar Henderson too, who's also regarded as, one of the best shortstops in the game. Above Shohei Ohtani, who's currently the favorite to win MVP. All right, I'm going to go cry myself to sleep now. Even though I'm not going to go to sleep yet, but I'm going to go cry myself off this podcast. But do you have anything else you want to add before I continue to cry about Brandon Lau?
No, I mean, look, that's pretty much it. Hey, but look, if the Mets don't make the playoffs, don't worry. Other sports coming back. Knicks are soon. Rangers coming back soon. Tomorrow, Man United play their first game of the Premier League season, so they're damn well gonna make me freaking tear my hair out of my head because I got to deal with a dumbass manager. Who?
Wow, that's nothing new. That sounds very familiar. Yeah. So, if the Mets don't end up helping us out here making the playoffs, then. Yeah, it's Nick's ball for me because the Rangers are a whole separate thing to rant and rave about. But that's going to be it because the season isn't over yet. It isn't. But this Marlins series could very well, dictate how things go, because all of a sudden, if they find themselves 5, maybe even more games out after the series, then I would say it's safe to say at that point that there is virtually no hope unless they went undefeated on the West Coast road trip, which that is most definitely not happening. But that is going to be it. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new, especially if you're a Mets fan. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we will see you guys in the next one.